Today, I'm so pleased to be talking about small business because not only am I a small business owner, but as a future representative, legislator, I know that our people right now have been putting way too much emphasis on big business, on these giant corporations that come in from outside of the state. And we really need to start talking about our local businesses. We need to start talking about the people who are creating jobs in our areas and keeping that money locally. We need to talk about family businesses, where it's mom and pop, but also cousins and aunties and uncles who are all working together. And we've seen during the COVID crisis, especially how critical our small businesses are. In a lot of ways, it's the front lines of our economy. Main Street really keeps things running. I'm pleased to be the owner of Vithoria Games along with my husband, and we are literally on Main Street and Wrecker Road here in Mesa. And having a business and talking to customers is one of the main reasons that I'm running, because it helped me to connect with my community. And I realize that there are such disparages that we need government to step in and help. It's a problem that's too big for one person or one organization to solve. But we have to do it in a way that's smart and that uplifts people. So today, I'm very, very pleased to be joined by my special guest, Jenny Poon. Jenny is an entrepreneur and founder of CO+HOOTS, which is ranked number 4 co-working space in the entire US by Inc.com. It currently houses 280 plus scaling entrepreneurs and small businesses and has been an integral role in creating hundreds of jobs locally. Jenny speaks regularly on leadership and on the importance of nurturing innovation in the workspace and works tirelessly to bring visibility to co-working as a new economic development tool. It's exactly the kind of thing that I think we need more of here in Arizona. Jenny also serves as an advisor for numerous startups and board chair of the CO+HOOTS Foundation. She is a mentor for several young entrepreneurs and was named Phoenix Business Journal's 2016 Phoenix Business Person of the Year. She's the first minority and the first woman to receive that honor. So thank you so much for joining me today, Jenny. And I just want to ask kind of a couple of questions and have a dialogue before our Q&A about where small business is right now and what do we need looking forward. Sometimes we get caught so much in the survival of day to day that we don't do enough vision and planning, and we need to talk about where do we want to go. So for right now, what are the main things you're seeing as needs in the business community?
Hi, everyone. So thanks, Suzanne, for having me and for being such an incredible, courageous person to lead at this challenging time. I just want to, I've been having this conversation a lot now with small businesses and entrepreneurs. And one of the biggest things is it's becoming harder and harder to just branch off on your own. One of the, I guess like the barriers and the risks are just much higher now than they've ever been before. And I posted this on Twitter the other day because I was chatting with a reporter about this. I think one of the biggest challenges is healthcare and how healthcare is so tied to employment right now. And so when you work for a large company, it becomes a huge incentive, obviously, to work for them because you get this healthcare. But the minute you branch out on your own and you're running your own business, that healthcare cost becomes solely yours to own. And an example of this, and Angelique and I used to work at the Republic together, was when I was at the Republic, Arizona Republic. Combined, my husband and I paid, I think, like $150 for insurance a month. As soon as, and of course, legislation has changed a lot since then, and our healthcare industry has changed a lot since then. But since we've branched out and been on our own, our health insurance on the affordable care on the marketplace last year was $1,200 a month for our 3-person family. And it like goes from $1,200 to, we have friends that are paying $1,500 a month for pretty basic care, right? We go to the hospital doctor once a year and pretty healthy people. And I understand the the process around that, right? That we are paying to cover everybody. But I think it's a significant amount for one group to cover. And as we continue moving, it's just not sustainable. So, like, I think about that. Suzanne, you've talked a lot about universal basic income too. I think those two pieces would help create a lot more access to entrepreneurs and small businesses to be able to grow. Because if you think about it, $1,200 to $1,500 a month is an employee, right? And when we think about small businesses and its relationship to government and local government's all about, like, how can we create jobs for these small businesses? How can we help encourage creation of jobs? Well, the fact that the one highest cost might even be more than my mortgage and utility bills for my business, or my lease bill for my business, is crazy, right? Like, that could have been a job, but instead I'm using it to just cover my basic expenses. So I would throw that out there. I know we have a few entrepreneurs and small businesses as well on this, but I think those are the main things that are challenges right now when we think about de-risking and creating access for people to start their businesses and create a self-sustaining lifestyle for themselves. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to encourage everybody who's here with us to please start putting your questions or your thoughts in the chat, because we really do want to have a full discussion. And if you think there's a topic we might not get to, or even just something that you're thinking about, what's a challenge for you in your business right now, or something that you're seeing going on, please feel free to put those thoughts and comments out there. I think you're exactly right with healthcare. I support public healthcare. We need to move in that direction, and we need to move it pretty quickly because, exactly like you, I'm on Obamacare. And as a small business owner, that gets to be expensive, even with the subsidies that we have. But that's really the only option that we have. And I will say health insurance held me back. I probably would have gone into business maybe 2 or 3 years earlier, right? But I was like, well, I've got this job and I have health insurance, and how are we going to manage that? And the same thing, universal basic income really helps provide a safety net, but it also creates a bottom. It makes sure that you can pay some basic expenses, that you can really reinvest into your business. I know that's something so hard that when your business is your sole source of income, you want to reinvest. I know I do. I want to expand product lines and do more marketing and do more things that'll help people and hire more people. But we've also got to cover those basic expenses. And I think the combination of public health care and a basic income would go a long way toward people being able to really take those creative ideas that they already have, right? Like, they're already out there, but they can't make that jump because of those barriers to entry right now. So I'm very much in agreement with that. And I really feel like that's an area that we need to start talking about in public policy, that it can't just be these tax breaks. Tax breaks are nice, but they're not really addressing our basic needs. And we also don't have enough capital available to small startup businesses and funding. Especially small and family businesses are the ones that are facing these challenges right now. And they also may not have the support and the wherewithal to be able to do some of these things, to know where to go. And so creating those structures is so important, which is why I'm so excited about your business and what you do. And let me see here. Yeah, we also have, I see Tanya put a question in there, that even if you don't have a business yet, but you have that idea, what are the kinds of things that maybe people are saying are holding them back?
You know, Suzanne, another thing, having worked a lot in Mesa with our Basic Cares program, and I think, Ryan, you'd probably be able to chat about this too, is a lot, like, there's like cultural barriers that, while local government and federal, even at the federal level, have launched programs for small businesses right now, I don't think there's a strategy, a true strategy around how to reach communities that traditionally have never worked with government before and have never gone out and applied for SBA loans, or just have an inherent mistrust with what government is pushing out. Um, I see, Ryan, you jumped on camera. um, did you have something to say around this? Because I know you work a lot in this space too.
Yeah, so with our community development corporation, we helped quite a bit of the businesses in the West Mesa and Tempe area to apply for various PPP, EIDL, and the Mesa Cares. And one of the main issues, even for the Mesa Cares, I'll give an example there, is that when businesses that were owned by Spanish-speaking business owners, the application was next to impossible for them to navigate. That, I mean, it was hard anyways, right? Even for somebody who's generally knowledgeable in business practices and what things you have to fill out, but it was hard. And then so when we brought that up, we said, hey, first off, there's no Spanish link to it, and it's very difficult to read and use. They said, oh, okay, we'll just make a Spanish version of that, right? But the context is not that you just need a Spanish version. It's just entirely different of how you apply for something, And so to your point, the context of how people apply for something is not thought of. They just say, well, we made a link available, and that's it,
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, thank you so much for jumping on with us. And I know that you are also so involved in the business community, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, and you follow these things really, really closely, and you have some great thoughts. So I appreciate you sharing that with us today. We do have to really talk about those disparities, especially language access, not just for Spanish speakers, but for Asian languages as well. We're just launching the Asian district here in Mesa, which is a phenomenal area. I encourage anybody who has not visited to please go down and see it. It's near Dobson and Maine, and a lot of great businesses. And it's the type of thing that we want to build more of, where it's community and family based. These are not businesses that are going to pack up and go somewhere else when things get tough. They're the businesses that are going to fight for us and our families, that are going to be there to help support our schools, and those are exactly the kind of businesses that are struggling the most right now with getting that help, with getting access. And there is definitely a divide too between everything being online. Well, not everybody is connected that way. So how can we get some of this information into communities where they really might need somebody to go and drop flyers, right? To drop off paper forms.
And I guess there's a question in the chat here too that I want to get to, but I wonder, Ryan, if there's a set fund or something that helps with that. Like I feel like each time we address problems, it's like it requires the community to say, hey, you forgot about this entire community of color, or these significant players in our community, and you just go for the easy route of like, I feel like the go-to for any city or government entity is let's just put it on our website and hope that people come. Like, let's just build it and assume people will be able to access it. And I don't know if there is a way to carve out funds to make sure that there's an equitable, inclusive approach to launching programs in the future, and not just say we're going to build it and launch it. And I don't know how cities craft their funding, but I wonder if that's something to think about.
So I think when cities craft their funding, they don't want to craft it towards, especially, so I'm going to, once again, I'll use the case of Mesa, and it's different than Phoenix and different than Tempe as well, because we've done some stuff in that as well. But in Mesa, for example, their idea is to let the partners they're working with craft how that works. And so the problem with that is, for example, so with the Rail CDC group, we handheld a lot of businesses, right, through the application processes. And so what they found later was the businesses that had applied, majority of businesses that had applied were coming from people that we handheld, right? And they need that hand holding. So after that, on the technical assistance side that's coming up next, on the next round, we have about 700 hours to technically assist businesses, right? So they're assuming that we as an organization are going to know what to do. They don't want to know what to do. They want to just give it to us or another group. Or, I mean, you know, I think, are you guys in the round too also, Jenny?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're waiting for us to come up with the answers, and then don't just basically deliver the end game to them that they can then say, oh, look what we did, you know? And so I think that's where it'll be difficult. And that's why for us, we're really only going to focus on communities in areas that are low to moderate income and business owners that are people of color. And of course, we're not going to just basically say, hey, you know, you're white, we're not going to work with you. But what we're going to do is try to choose areas that need it, because it's kind of our idea that the business district is directly connected to the neighborhood around it. And so it's kind of a, you know, it's moving that money out effect into the area.
That makes sense. Do you want me to read this question from Sandy, Suzanne?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start with some of the questions. I think that's a great segue into it.
So I'm sorry, Tanya, am I taking over your job? I'm going to go for it. So Sandy says, I worry about all of the small businesses who are struggling during COVID. This is the dream. This is their dream, their savings, their time and effort, and they are losing not only their means of income and contribution to their community, but falling behind on their vision and opportunity. What sorts of things can you do, Suzanne, to bring out this difficult time successfully, bring us out of this difficult time successfully?
Yeah, we really are fighting for lives and livelihoods. And I think this is something that has been politicized as an either or, right? We've been told that either we can protect people or we can have a strong economy. And for me, it's an and, right? Because we need to have both. We need to be protecting public health. You know, at my store, we've been mandating masks since March, right? If you're able to come in, and then of course we were closed in April, but we mandate masks because that's how we stay open, right? By having people wear masks and use good public health and sanitation practices, that's how we reopen businesses. That's how we get back to hiring people, creating jobs, and to moving forward. And we're going to need to be more thoughtful in the coming year and probably the years after that. Because we're learning that with the way that we travel and how interconnected we are, that this is the first one, but it's possible this could happen again, and we need to be more prepared. So we really do need to think about, first, public health is also economic health. And so I do support mask mandates. And I also support, let's get some of that CARES money into our hospitals, but also to our schools. And this is a big sticking point for me, because I think schools are potentially an area of community spread, and that if our schools are not well supported and well funded, then we're going to have that go into communities, and then we won't be able to run our businesses, not to mention the lives lost. So that's one of the reasons my campaign really focuses so much on school and education funding, is because that's going to be good for everybody around us. And the second part of that is we do need access to capital. You know, I think just like with universal basic income, people know how best to spend their money. So do business owners. The PPP, which, you know, had these kind of arbitrary ratios on how much had to go to employment versus how much could go to your day-to-day expenses, really wasn't as helpful as it could have been if it had just been cash grants or even these type of forgivable cash loans. So those are two things that I would like to see immediately done. And as a representative that I would put forward is, we've got to put public safety there. And we also need to give people more flexible cash to do the things they can to build jobs and to save businesses.
Perfect. Thank you, Suzanne. I am like, so Jenny and I are chatting, and if it's okay, I would just want to take a moment for Ryan to introduce himself, because we weren't sure if he was going to join the conversation, but now he has. So I have included him in the spotlight videos, and then we will continue with these conversations. Thank you.
Oh, okay, so I assume that's my cue. My name is Ryan Winkle, he, him, his, and I basically have just been in the West Mesa area, I don't know, doing community things and projects since 2012-ish. And that activity expanded my community development activity, I guess, into Phoenix, South Phoenix, Camelback Corridor, downtown Phoenix, Tempe, and the Asian district. I've been working on that since about 2013. And so my biggest focus has always been on how a community develops and how you empower it to develop itself without government, because it seems like, well, the government, they want to do help and they want stuff like that. A lot of this stuff is box checks for them, and it's just stuff for them to look good on how they use your tax dollars, which is generally they're giving you back a very small portion of what you're putting in as a collective. And so for me, economics on a neighborhood basis are extremely important, and that's my view generally is around that. So sometimes people are like, you're very insensitive, about this or that, and I'm like, well, you have to follow how that money comes, right? Because that's how it's going to come out in the end. How you're going to get somewhere is through how you're going to pay for it, or you're going to get people to be involved in it. Neighborhood economics, and that's me, I guess. Totally.
Well, we certainly need to be talking about neighborhood economics and kitchen table economics. And that's really the bedrock of our society. And so often I think political discussion gets so up in the air and, big national discussions. And there's a lot of important things going on nationally. But really what it comes down to is local politics, right? City councils, state legislatures, school boards. These are the things that really impact our day-to-day lives. And we need to put the focus back on that, because that's how we are protecting our communities and building our economies. And I saw a good question in chat that asked me just a little bit of expansion about how our schools are connected with our businesses. And I know right now, one of the propositions on the ballot, Prop 208, otherwise known as Invest in Education, is having a lot of advertising talking about, is it going to be hurting small businesses or not? And so I want to take just a moment to address that. Prop 208 is something that I support, and I've read through the proposition, and I'm happy to support it because it will help our schools in a huge way. But what it is it's only going to be taxing if somebody makes over $450,000 annually as their net, right? So we're not talking about gross profits. We're talking about your net, what you're really reporting on your taxes. And even then, it's only on the money above that amount. The majority of small business owners are not bringing home that kind of money. We're just not. I include myself in that. And so to use us as almost a pawn in their advertising, I find really shameful, because it's actually going to help small business owners. I need educated people in my workforce. And having stronger schools not only helps our own families, but it helps create that educated workforce. Right? We're going to need people who can go into trade schools. We need plumbers and carpenters. We need people to understand math and economics and to become entrepreneurs. Prop 208 for me helps all of those things. And really the businesses that it would start to tax and the people it would start to tax are a very, very small percentage of our population. Yeah, and I'd love to hear if Jenny or Ryan have some input on that as well.
I can't say that I know enough about 208 to comment on it. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I know it's something that was off the ballot and then on the ballot. So it's certainly worth researching a little bit further, though. And I know a lot of times chambers of commerce aren't necessarily supporting it at this point, but they're also a lot of times funded by very large corporations. I know SRP has a really big say in the Mesa Chamber of Commerce. I just went through the Chamber of Commerce's leadership program, actually, which is a wonderful program. And I encourage other people to apply and to go through it, because you do get to meet a lot of the stakeholders in Mesa. And there's a lot of nonprofits doing really wonderful work. There's a New Leaf in La Paz de Cristo. There's Oakwood Creative Care Center for people suffering with dementia and Alzheimer's. Really great businesses. But you also see who's getting heard. And there are some very, very large, Gateway Airport, SRP, really large, multi-million dollar companies that have a large say in the way that the chamber votes.
So, Suzanne, another good question from Angelique here is red tape and bureaucracy plague government services. What would be your first action as a HR to improve processes and forms?
We need to stop the duplication. We've all gone through this. Like when you have to apply at every single government level and give them all the same information again, that needs to be streamlined and consolidated. Our government agencies need to be able to talk to each other. You should be able to apply at, I would like to see it at the local level because I do believe in local control. And then that information should be transmitted to the other state agencies that need that information. It should not be on you as the business owner to keep doing the same repetitive tasks over and over again.
I've definitely seen that across many cities. I think a problem is there's not a technical infrastructure that is being combined. And even like, I think I was just talking to the city of Tempe the other day and asked them if they had a database of all their small businesses. And they said they did 3 years ago, but then that person left. And so they haven't been updating it since then. And so when COVID hit, they didn't have a list anywhere to really reach out, which is similar to many other cities, which is why their approach was to make phone calls, right? And Google these businesses and try to find them. But that's kind of unacceptable. It shouldn't take a huge pandemic to wake them up to say, hey, like we live in 2020 now. This isn't the 2000s. We need to, and this isn't even 1900s where like computers don't exist and databases don't exist. It truly is a simple form. And if that takes, I think one of the things that was brought up was like, do we need to think about a licensing requirement, a free licensing requirement even to just start tracking? These are interesting ideas, and I wonder where that could go. But I do think a database is necessary. And when I think about this question too, at the state level, we have done some interesting things. I saw that the incorporation process has become really streamlined. I know, Ryan, we talked about this before. Where now, anytime you start a business, you have your own portal to log into, and you can see all your businesses that you're working on. You can see if you need to pay property taxes, or you need what's the status of your articles of incorporation, right? Like that should be similar to how at a local level, at a city level, like all that information should be tracked somewhere for you to be able to manage easily, and for the city to be able to reach out to you. And that's part of like what we're trying to build as well, but it shouldn't be one-off, right? Like it should be consistent across the state, across different cities. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that that's one of the challenges that would help small businesses, is just having our information a closer connection to the cities, so that when something comes out, they know how to reach us. And then to Angelique's point, like having been a provider for city services and applied for state things, like the forms are all different. Everybody's form is different. And then when we're reporting back things, the format for that is different too. Like even though it's the same funding stream, CDBG funds or anywhere else, each city and region or whatever has a different requirement for what they're tracking, which is odd. And so some streamlined systems there would be nice. And leading into technology, honestly, I think when we were a part of one of the programs at the city of Phoenix and even city of Mesa, the request to submit our reporting was requested to be like spiral bound and physically handed into the city. And I'm like, can we just send a Dropbox or like digital files to you? And the answer was no. And I just think like, how is that in 2020, how is that possible? And then what inevitably happened was that program would move from one department to another, and they would lose all of our paperwork and we'd have to redeliver it. So these things are just like, I think from a business and partner level, with government, these could be really easy things. But as a small business, if I have to recreate all of my documentation again and again because you lost it or because it wasn't properly organized, like I don't have the bandwidth to do that. So that then excludes me from being able to continue to support and be a partner with a city or with a state even, right? And so that's part of the procurement process that I would like to see shifted to, is continually finding easier ways to create access for small businesses to participate in the government contract process. Sorry, that was a lot.
Oh, thank you. And, honestly, that's the exact kind of information that I need. And that's why I love having these conversations and having them in a transparent way. Because, legislators have to take in a lot of information. And a lot of times people wonder, like, where did you get that? Right? And I would love to continue having conversations where people can, see what are we talking about? Who's being involved? Where's that data coming from? Because to be data driven, it also matters where that information is coming from, right? We see a lot of times that lobbyist groups will put together these like very glossy brochures and they happen to leave out some inconvenient facts. But to actually talk to the people who are doing the work on the ground and who can really say, hey, X, Y, and Z, these are actual changes that would really make my life easier, that would make government more accessible to me and more equitable. Because what it is, people are getting help from the government right now, right? There are people who are getting grants, getting money, they're getting help, they're getting support. But it's not all the people. And they usually have a legacy either in their family or some other type of support that's allowing them to do this. And I think that's really our work, representing our community, is to say, hey, I'm going to represent all of you. I'm going to help all of our businesses have that equal footing to get this kind of help that we need so badly right now. So thank you so much Jenny for giving me all those very specifics, because that's what we need to do. We can't always talk about, these giant big picture ideas. And I have a lot of visions and concepts, but I'm going to need, January comes, real policies that we can put into action.
Can you ban fax machines from the local government? That would be great.
I think also, Angelique, to your point of like from an HR standpoint, it's, to me, it comes down to what our expectation is of what government is supposed to do. And so, for example, like we expect the city of Mesa, I'll use that as an example again from my personal experience, and the city of Mesa to attract businesses, right? Because what we expect is, I want to see in the news, I saw 600 new jobs in my city, because that means we're a city that's coming up and doing things, right? But there's been times when I said, okay, what did you do to attract those 600 jobs? Oh, well, we pay $200,000 a year to Greater Phoenix Economic, Council to be part of a regional group that does attraction things, right? But then they put $120,000 a year towards the expansion or help of small businesses, right? So they're putting $200,000 a year just into attraction in a group fund of large businesses, and $120,000 only into helping small businesses, which may not even be expanding them, So it comes down to, what do we expect them to do? How are we giving our words to them in ways they can understand it and in large groups, so they actually try to do something about that, And when it comes to putting information from one government entity to another, you have to remember there's PII, which is, personally identifiable information that every single government cares about. And so you have to figure out chain of custody for information. If there was a way to figure out chain of custody on information and make it the business owners themselves that is lent to the state or lent to the city, that would be great, right? And then that becomes, it's not transferable by the city, then it's transferable by you, in maybe a one source place. I don't know, that would be great in my thinking.
I think that was the problem that came up as I was digging into this. I think that was the problem as to why the cities couldn't get emails and stuff from the state, because the state has all that information from anybody who's created an LLC or incorporated. It doesn't include anybody who's a home-based business, but when I reached out to the state and I said, why can't the cities just pull that database that you guys have? And they said, we can't actually give that to them. And so everybody, all the cities had to start from scratch to rebuild this database. And really, like you were saying, Ryan, that there's these partners that work with the cities, and they're doing great work and they're collecting all this information. But I think what's missing is that information isn't being fed back into a massive database where all these partners come together. And so it just gets filed away and then put into a storage unit somewhere where eventually it's forgotten about. And so I think the partners are collecting great data. It's just not being combined. So I do want to jump to this other question. Angelique asks, this is slightly off topic, but as an active parent in Mesa schools, how would you ensure schools are a top priority?
Well, and schools are a top priority for me, right? That's who I am as a candidate. And I have two little boys. They're in 4th and 6th grade in our Mesa public schools. And so that's one of the things I'm running for, is to prioritize our schools. Because I can tell you right now, the 2 reps in my district haven't been doing that. And to speak even to the technology piece of this, I don't think that at least one of them, Rusty Bowers, who's been in for 17, 20 years, I don't think he even understands the technology that we're discussing right now, and certainly wouldn't be interested in implementing it. And that's one of our problems, is that a lot of those long-time entrenched leaders don't even understand what's capable right now. And they're not doing the research. It's not an age thing, it's a willingness thing. It's, are you willing to do the research? Are you willing to investigate this? Are you willing to continue to learn and to listen to the people who are doing the work and need this help? And that's not what I've seen from my representatives, right? As a small business owner, I haven't seen that over the past 3, 4, 5 years here. And so it's something that I want to bring, is that I do understand technology and I use it. And as entrepreneurs, we're at the forefront, the cutting edge. And I understand government's not going to be there, because we have to be very, very careful with security and data and privacy. I also believe in people having their own personal data rights. That's something else I'd like to talk about in a different form maybe, but data rights are important. And I know, like, our Maricopa County Recorder, Adrian Fontes, who's fantastic, please reelect him, has created a voter dashboard where you can see all of your information and access it in one place. Maybe we could create a business dashboard where you could store your information and then send it and upload it as needed. Because I feel you when you say, recreating these documents takes so much time and bandwidth, and time is money. In fact, time is more important because you don't get more of it. So if I can find ways as a government representative to save you time, I know that's putting money into your pocket, right? That's putting money into our communities. And I want to take that same kind of concept to our schools too, where they're also plagued by these same kind of bureaucratic duplications, and they're doing their best, but they need the help for technology and for infrastructure. And that's something our government as a whole can do so much better on, but it's another way that, for me, supporting schools and supporting business go hand in hand.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. Sorry, I've kind of lost it. Tanya, you might need to help me with what is a good one to pull up here, because we've...
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. So Lisa made a very interesting comment. So some of us have been writing to the mayor and city council members to urge them to find a funding source to provide shade at all Mesa, at all Mesa bus stops. For people to get to their jobs or to patronize businesses, they need transportation. Temps are climbing with climate change. Temperatures are climbing with climate change, and it's a dangerous situation to have people unshaded waiting for their bus. We currently have hundreds of unshaded bus stops in Mesa. This affects people of color disproportionately. I think this is, it's not exactly a question, but I think Lisa's comment is very relevant to how, small businesses, cities, legislation, like how everything is interdependent, and they need to communicate among each other. What are your thoughts?
Let me just, I'll respond, but then I'd love to hear from Ryan too on this. Is that, it's an interesting balance at the state legislative level because I want to help streamline and bring technology and do things that you need a state level to do, right? Expanding broadband, those type of access issues. But then there's also a point where we need to roll back some legislation that's preventing cities from doing their jobs, that's keeping them from being able to put in the type of common sense policies that make sense in each city. Because shaded bus stops in Mesa might make a lot of sense, but maybe in Prescott, they don't. And so, but maybe Prescott wants to ban plastic bags, and in Mesa, that's not good business, and that's not what people want to do. So I know that we've had an issue with legislative overreach in some issues. And that's another piece that I would be wanting to tackle because I think that would help small businesses, but it would help our communities to be able to self-govern when it comes to these kind of individual kind of questions and concerns.
Thank you, Suzanne. So I've been working on a project called, it's generally a heat action planning process for 3 of the hottest neighborhoods in Arizona, which one is in Mesa. It's called the Care neighborhood. It's on Broadway and Horn. The second one is in South Phoenix, and the third is in Maryvale. And essentially what we've been looking at for the last 2 years is exactly what you're talking about. And it's, moms and older people walking around and trying to ride buses places and the trials and tribulations of that, And so Mesa, if you look at it closely, if you look at the downtown and some various other places, you'll see that they have these beautiful bus stops, giant, with big rows, but you go one street over to Broadway or one street over to where the Washington Escobedo neighborhood is, which is traditionally the segregated neighborhood of Mesa. It's literally a pole in the ground in dirt. That's like the bus stop, right? And those are the ones that have the most people using them, obviously, right? And so there's some ways you have to think about this. Transportation is paid for in partnership through national grants sent through the state and then paired by a city, right? So any city that will put a bus stop somewhere is committing to a $30,000 probably bus stop or more, and then maintaining it for life. So the reason why cities don't want to do anything is because they say, oh, the minute I do something, I have to now maintain that for life, And so I agree with you. We need to have shade in shaded areas, but there has to be a change in the way that policy is thought of and what people are willing to pay for when it comes to putting their taxes somewhere, I guess,
Thank you. So we have a last question. Before we finish this question, I want to read Judith's comment. Suzanne, I so appreciate your support of public schools and your understanding of how the success of our students impacts the success of our communities. We so need your talents and skills in the legislature. Oh, thank you, Judith. And this comes from one of our favorite teachers. Like, Judith is so amazing as a teacher. I have a last question before we head on to wrapping up. From Sandy, as a follow-up to her previous question, what can help the businesses in terms of being successful in hiring and keeping a good group of employees? I think this is a good question for all 3 of you. Who would like to start?
I'll start, but then I'd love to hear, especially from Jenny on this, because you work with so many businesses. I think the first thing is a business really needs to know its own needs, to really assess what are the key skills, and then to be able to interview well, which is a skill, and to have the support to learn how to do that. I learned how to do that through years in the insurance industry. But it is something that's definitely hit or miss. And then having the ability to work with somebody. And hopefully that employee is also in a good place where they have regular transportation, as we just discussed, where they have healthcare, as we've discussed. It's to really have strong employees, to have strong businesses. Not only do you need to care about them as a business owner, but we need to have a strong society as a whole.
Yeah, I I think I mirror a lot of what Suzanne says. I also think about my parents who own a small restaurant and have owned it for 40 years in Minneapolis, and they're immigrants here. And I'm in their books today because I'm like, what's going on with them? And I look at what has really helped me and the businesses that I know is really access to like talent and people that know how to run businesses. And a lot of times in communities of color and under and women in general, like if you don't have a community around you that knows entrepreneurship or business, it's hard to tap into that. I think we're getting better. We have these central hubs. We have the SBA. We have small business centers, right? Like we have COOTS Coworking incubator spaces around, but it does take a little bit of a push to get people to just break into those networks and circles. But I look at the work that we do with technical assistance, and if there was a way to build trust around government providing technical assistance or partners providing technical assistance, I think it truly could be really huge, right? Like if you could go to somebody and say, I'm starting my business, I know what I'm struggling with. Could you just help guide me through this process, and have somebody not only just talk to you about it, but help you build the structure for you to be successful? A lot of times the challenges in the beginning have just been finding the right people, and having to find so many of the wrong people and waste so much time and money before you find the right person. That time and that money, a lot of times you just don't have, right? And when you hit that barrier, then you kind of have to stop. Like, I'm out of money and I'm out of time, and I need to actually go find a job to be able to sustain myself. And so it's this weird like luck versus time and balance. And I think about like, okay, if we can help create that safety net for people that gives them more time and ability to take risks, and fail, which is going to inevitably happen. But also if we can just create beacons where for businesses to be able to say, I can go here for support, and I know I will be nurtured and helped, and I can go here. And a lot of times that's going to take time to build that kind of trust, and community partners and organizations need to be there consistently for those people. I think that's what will lead to people being better leaders and better managers of small businesses, because it's a constant learning curve for small businesses. So I think about that, and then I think, how do we get them more money? How do we get them more customers and clients, and not keep helping the rich get richer, but help these small businesses get bigger? And I think a big piece of that is getting them the ability to get government contracts, but also quickly learn how to build businesses in the digital world. And that will constantly change. And so that's why I think this network to people that know how to do this kind of stuff is so important. Expanding those networks and making sure that that's available. And if the government can support in creating funds for that, to create more equitable communities, then I think that's the big picture I would like to see. I know that's a lot of like moving pieces, but I hope that covers a few of them. I think it's learning and having access to that learning, and it comes in many different ways. So
yeah, well, and just to that, the retention piece of that, I wanted to add in, when I worked for an insurance company, and my husband has worked for Discover Card, right? So some big companies. The number one reason that people lost their jobs was because of illness. It was because somebody got sick and used up all their sick time. And then they tried to come in, right? We've all seen this. If you've ever worked in a call center or anything like that, somebody comes in, they're clearly sick. You're like, what are you doing here? And they say, I don't have any other time. I don't have any option. I heard a story from a friend that there was, in another city, there was a bus crash. And this person stopped to help because they were like a medic. And they said the first thing that the people on the bus wanted was somebody to tell their boss why they were late. Not to call their loved one, not to get medical attention even though it was needed in many cases. but to tell their boss that they'd be late and please don't fire them. There are so many people living just a hair's breadth away from unemployment, and that unemployment equals homelessness, equals loss of everything for them. And that absenteeism, a lot of it is healthcare. And it is that a lot of businesses run such tight budgets, right? They're so close to the line. And that families are running tight budgets too. I mean, they're counting every penny because they have to. And that's one of those reasons, like we talked about, healthcare for everybody and a basic income would just go a huge way to helping give people enough confidence to say, hey, call my loved one. Let them know I'm okay. Let them know to meet me at the hospital. And, you know, I'm going to tell my boss, I'm going to be responsible, but that doesn't need to be the first call. And as an employer, I should never be the first call. Never. You know, and that's, I think that moment of humanity is what we need to bring back into business. And what we need to tell people still exists in so many of these small businesses, family businesses, new businesses, and even potentially in some of the larger ones. But we need to change the way we think about this structure as a society.
Yeah, I like that, Suzanne. I like that you're thinking about the employee, right? I agree. I think if we work on getting insurance and health coverage for everybody and not have it be the burden of an employer, not just because that's an extra cost, and also for bigger companies, it's a huge incentive, like a huge tax break for them to be able to do that, but really like have insurance there so that anybody who's making even minimum wage can think about going to get care without questioning if they're going to lose their job or have enough money to pay for it. I think those are things that those two questions are not just for minimum wage workers now, which is so sad, right? Like traditionally that would be the question for a lot of people who are living paycheck by paycheck, but even middle class families and like upper middle class families are concerned about, do I have enough funds in my bank account to be able to pay for this next visit, which is so different than 10 years ago. And I'm not saying like that we have gotten worse. I think we're making steps. These are like, in business, what do we say? Storming, norming, and forming. We're in the storming phase and we're going to get there. But I think there's some active pushing that needs to happen for us to get to the point where we're not worried about if we can even go to an urgent care center today, and the costs around that. I went to the hospital in February and I have insurance. And it was like a respiratory thing that I had. And I went to the ER and I was in the ER for 24 hours because of this respiratory thing. And they said it was a combination of like allergies and whatever. I think it might have been like COVID early, but I was there for 24 hours and I wanted to leave after 12 hours and they said, no, we really don't recommend you leaving because you could have this thing and we need to monitor you for 24 hours. And in my head, I was like, but what is this hospital bill going to be? And I told that to the nurse and he was like, but what if you die? And so it's like, the reality is that's the question that goes through everybody's mind right now. And that shouldn't be the case if you're facing things like that. And I have insurance, right? And so I think that there's a huge problem there. And if even middle class people and upper middle class people are one medical scare away from bankruptcy, that's a problem in America. So.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that story. And you know, you mentioned it, the progress of a group, the progress of a team, right? It's forming, storming, norming. But the last one is performing, where you go through this turmoil and you figure it out and you learn how to work together and then you make magic, right? That's how we change things. And I agree, right now, our society is very much in a storming situation where there are so many different thoughts. There's so much turmoil. You know, you turn on the news and things are scary. Things are really scary as individuals, but also as business owners. Because it's lives and livelihoods that are on the line right now. And there's a lot of different forces in society pushing. But I think it's important that we push forward. that we move into that place so that we can form, that we can come together, work toward that more perfect union, and then perform, and then step into the new economy, step into the next moment of our lives in a way that is progressive and prosperous and brings everybody with us. Because right now there are so many people being left behind and out of the picture, and they're not at the table and they're not represented. And that's really the thing. All of these conversations, all of these questions come together, and that's what our legislatures should be doing. And it's what I want to do for you as a legislator, is to bring people together, to bring these new ideas to the table, and to make real practical change. Because we can talk about this, but if we don't get me in office, if we don't get people like me in office, then we're just talking. You know, and it was a great conversation, but what we're going to have is another 2 or another 4 years of the same, if not worse. Because as much as we're making it right now, and I know a lot of businesses are barely making it right now, we're only going to last so long, right? After 2 months, we lost a couple. After 4 months, we lost more. We're at 6 months now. We've got to turn this around. But we're 45 days away from that election. So thank you so much for your support, Jenny. It means the world. And for everybody else who's here, I mean, this is how we do it. This is how we make change, is to getting together, telling our friends, spreading the word. And if you can volunteer, please do. If you can donate, please do. It helps us pass this message out there that you've got a chance for change. And in Arizona, I mean, we only need 2 seats to flip the House. That's very doable. And this election is so important, but it is so close. It is coming fast, and we have to act now.
Absolutely. Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, everybody, for your supportive comments. This is when we do what we do, right? I am going to post again the link on the chat and invite you to join our big action weekend next weekend. We're going to be phone banking Saturday and Sunday. It's our big last phone banking effort before getting out the vote, because ballots drop on the 7th, right? So the election is pretty much here. Please join us. Please invite your friends to join. Everybody's welcome. Please consider donating, consider everything. But if you can only do one thing to help get Suzanne to the House, this is something that you can do. You can sign up for a shift. Training will be provided. First-time callers are welcome. And ask anybody on Team Hug. We know how to have fun. So it's going to be fun, and it's going to be awesome. Jenny, thank you so much for being here. I lost Ryan at some point. Internet has been acting out today, so I'm sure something like that happened. Suzanne, and I'll leave the floor to you to wrap up, and thank you everybody for being here.
Jenny, do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us?
I really appreciated taking the time with everybody. I think this is really, really important. And as always, I think, Suzanne, you're the perfect person for this role and to lead us into the next chapter for Arizona. So I'm here. I'm in support. I'm making your stickers. And I absolutely believe that we can do this. And I agree. I don't think that we're far from being able to do this. So cheers. And I think, Suzanne, you're going to be great for us.
Thank you so much. And actually, Ryan messaged me. He jumped off to go do a phone bank for Mark Kelly. Yeah. So he is putting in the time and the effort. I'm so glad that Ryan could join us today. It's so good to see him again. I think the last time I saw him in person was at the Asian District Night Market back right before everything went into lockdown. And it's so good to see people again. I miss everybody. But I mean, this is how we get back together, right? This is how we get the band back, is we work hard, we win this election, we put public health at the forefront, and we make it into 2021 together and intact. And that's really what I'm going for right now. Let's make it through. Let's get to November 3rd. But okay, polls are opening October 7th. That is around the corner. So, as always, I am all about accountability and transparency. If you have any questions we didn't get to, you are always welcome to email me. There's a contact form on our website at hugforhouse.com. I'm your representative. I want to be there for you, and I want to have these conversations because as much as I have ideas, I need to be listening. I want to hear from you. What's causing problems? What are your concerns? Let's have that conversation and let's keep it going. Because in January, when I'm in the house, I'm not disappearing. I'm going to be showing up and we're going to stay in contact and make real change for Arizona.
Suzanne Hug is the only Arizona House of Representatives LD 25 Democratic candidate. Suzanne Hug is a small business owner, a parent of kids currently attending public schools, and a respected community leader. She earned a degree in economics from Arizona State University and is skilled in customer service, risk analysis, budgeting, marketing, and project management. She brings a fresh vision for a progressive and prosperous Arizona. Her dedication to data-driven solutions and pushing forward humanity-centered ideas will help develop Arizona into a national model. Her focus is on fully funding public education and expanding healthcare solutions. Suzanne Hug is practical and thoughtful, a person who will carefully guard our taxpayer dollars while protecting important social safety nets and working for equality in our state laws. Suzanne is fierce, determined, and diligent in her defense of civil liberties and human rights. She is the leader Arizona needs now.